Today on the Business Builders podcast, we're talking with special guest Paul Kitching, a true networking legend and creator of the networking series Coffee with PK. So in this episode, Paul shares his insights with us about how he developed his networking skills, and he gives his tips on how we can improve ours. Well, welcome to the Business Builders podcast. We are your hosts. I am Brenton Gowland.
And I'm Ron Tomlian.
And Ron, it's Christmas.
It's Christmas. Yes, fantastic. Best time of the year as far as I'm concerned.
Time to watch Die Hard again.
If you consider that a Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas movie.
We're not going to go there.
Fair enough. Look, this is going to be our last episode for the year, everyone. We've had a great year. We've achieved some of the things we wanted to achieve, haven't we, Ron?
Yeah, 23 episodes.
23 episodes. We were going for 24, but we were going for a cadence of one a fortnight.
Yeah, and we just about got there too.
Yeah. So
my trip to New Zealand probably put a spanner in that work, so I apologize for that.
Oh, that's okay. So, and again, it's Christmas. So we're about a week out from Christmas, which is so exciting. And if you're listening internationally, we know it's Christmas in Adelaide because we have the pageant, and then there's a square right in the middle of the city called Victoria Square, and up goes the Christmas tree.
Yeah, 70-meter Christmas tree. Do you want to know who put that Christmas tree in Victoria Square the first time?
Who put the Christmas tree in?
Me. When I was at Adelaide City Council, I organised the tree for the very first year, and it's grown. It was 50 meters to start with, now 70 meters tall. That's my tree.
Well, I'm impressed.
Just remember that.
Is it the same tree?
Same tree.
How has it grown?
Well, they put bits on the bottom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well,
you can't put it on the top. You have to put it on the bottom.
There you have it, folks. Ron is the reason we know it's Christmas in Adelaide. So if you come here from an international place for Christmas, you'll see that tree in the middle of our city, and Ron is responsible for that tree.
They keep putting it up.
Yeah.
That's all I care about.
So look, just a couple of quick things. We've had a great year, as Ron said. We've achieved our cadence of about an episode every 2 weeks. And I think the whole series that we've been doing, we've done about 3 series this year, one on strategic planning, one on business development, and now this one on effective networking. We think those have gone reasonably well from the feedback we've been getting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a series is the way we'll continue to do things in the future.
Yep. So on that, we're going to be taking a holiday for January, a well-deserved break, and we'll come back in February. But we're going to be doing a bit of planning, and we're going to plan out what the year is going to look like. And we'll let you know in the first episode when we come back in February what that's going to look like. But yeah, we're going to really also try and engage more with you, our listener, this year. We've now bought a URL. We'll have an email address because we've got a bit of feedback that it's been a little bit difficult to contact us via LinkedIn on some occasions.
Yeah. So all of that, good developments for the new year.
Yep. So our Christmas special, what's going on, Ron?
For me?
No, for our episode.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, well, the episode today, we've got a very special guest. We've been talking about networking, effective networking. And if people remember, we talked about the 5 stages: define your purpose, plan your networking, actually get out there and do it, review what you've done, and then look at how you improve. Today, we've got a special guest who's an effective networker himself.
He's a bit of a networking legend, I think.
Absolutely. So more about Paul in a moment.
Yes.
But we better get the sponsors out of the way.
Okie dokie. So our sponsors, Ron, who are they?
SA Business Builders. And we just had our last event for the year.
And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Had a good mix of young guns and business professionals.
Fantastic. And of course, there's AdaptCo.
Which is me. So I go into businesses and I help them get their marketing sorted out. And then I make myself redundant in the process and keep in touch with them and make sure they're on the right track over time.
It's all about better marketing.
Better marketing equals better businesses. And we'll talk about that next year. I think I really want to start with a marketing series next year because it's so important, but I won't.
Music to my ears.
Don't let me get distracted right now because there's so much to say. So that's our sponsors.
Yeah, and I think it's time to introduce our guest.
Okay, so our guest today is Paul Kitching, and he's currently the Business Development Manager at Fuller Brand Communication, but PK is his acronym that he uses. He's been around for a while. So he's worked at AMP in retail and Country Road as a writer. He's been a sales rep and advertising manager for Rip It Up magazine, which was a beautiful magazine publication we had here in Adelaide, if you're listening again internationally. He was also the National Sales Manager at the Australian Traffic Network before joining the team at Fuller. Now, the interesting thing about PK, Paul Kitching, and we'll refer to him as PK, I reckon, when you've been in Adelaide, everyone knows this man's name. And we've been talking about effective networking, and I think the definition of effective networking can be different for different people, as we've discussed. But I'll be really interesting to hear Paul's definition, because what he's achieved is he's achieved a profile where people know him. He did something quite amazing during the COVID lockdown, because we were all confined to our bedrooms or our houses, etc. He started this thing called Coffee with PK. And it was basically a group where he got people together to just have coffee over Zoom. But it didn't just stop at the end of COVID. It kept going, and it's still going to this day. And he's won awards for it. And he's brought people together from all around the world. And I think he's done something like 300 episodes, but we'll find out from him in a minute. And I think just so impressive, and just a great way of thinking, right, what do we do with what we've got? How do we make use of the technology at our fingertips? And how do we bring people together in a way that, keeps people moving, keeps people interacting? And so this man's got his finger on the pulse when it comes to networking, I think, Ron.
No wonder we wanted him on the show.
So with that, welcome, Paul, to the Business Builders Podcast. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much, Brenton and Ron. I really appreciate the time and your interest, I suppose, in chatting about it. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I love the fact that you've covered both BD and networking of recent, both things that are very important to my life and my world, and it's brilliant to just be a small part of what you're doing.
Well, that is our pleasure. And look, whenever we do a series, we always try to get an expert on the subject to come in, and really we like to hear from their point of view about how they go about doing what they do. And I can really see I've known Paul, just people who are listening, probably for 15 years now, from back in your traffic networking days. And you've always been, there was a saying that Paul used to go to the opening of an envelope.
Correct.
Do you still do that?
My wife often reminds me of that. And she also says that I'm not networking, I'm not working, but I'm not working. I am working. I'm not networking.
Ron has a famous line about that.
Yeah. Oh, I did the same thing. Yeah. I often got told that, there's only one letter difference between networking and not working.
That's right.
Okay, we're going to talk today a little bit about the results that come from networking, because I know you're getting good results for Fuller, who you're working for at the moment. So let's dive into the questions. So do we call you Paul or PK, by the way?
PK is awesome. Thank you.
Is that what you prefer?
Yeah, I prefer.
PK?
That's awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. The brand goes on. We could do another series with Paul about personal branding. We can do that next year. Anyway, look, Paul, as our careers progress, we generally discover the value of networking over time. And you've obviously, from your bio, you've had a long history of working at Country Road and different places. So how did you discover the importance of networking and really get an understanding that, wow, this is something that's really important?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned Country Road, because I believe it was back then. I was working in retail, as a part-time job, Country Road. I was working at AMP at the same time, just working Friday nights, Saturday mornings at Country Road back in the 90s. And working there, it taught me that I wanted to work in sales, but also that networking and building relationships was the difference, I suppose, for me. And it was the incredible sales training that I learned at Country Road that was to this day the best that I've ever had in my career, because it was all based around relationship building, positivity, your attitude, quotes like your attitude, not your aptitude, determines your altitude, and things like that. It was all about developing relationships with customers. And essentially that was my first taste in networking. So, and then making sure, keeping in touch with customers, making sure that, you're chatting with them. And yes, at the end of the day, we were selling, a chambray shirt for $70 that they could have bought for $10 down the road. but it was building that relationship and the people coming back in and having, like any good retail store, the relationships with them. And it was also about that, the same very thing at Rip It Up magazine back in the 2000s, where I really ramped it up and I realized that it, again, made a difference to my role in sales. For a free magazine that relied on sales, we were selling the idea, someone picking up a free magazine and maybe noticing in the ad. So again, networking was the key with all my clients there.
Great. So you learned it young, and it came through training through Country Road, experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Experience and training, and then I suppose just trying everything, because obviously it was also, as we know with sales, there's so many things we could talk about there, but it was absolutely learning the sales skills, but remembering that building on the relationships was the key behind all of that.
Yeah, great.
PK, in this series, we've been discussing the disciplines that help us become more effective networkers. And the first discipline we talked about was defining your purpose. Can you talk us through your purpose for networking and why you chose that purpose and how it's helped you?
Sure thing. Yeah, great question. I've been listening to your podcast, and I love the fact that you've covered off all of those things and the fact that purpose is such an important element of it. My role at Fuller is business development, like we're all working on it. It should be new business development, actually, because it's all about introducing new people to what we do and what we do at Fuller. And sure, I am the BD manager, and effectively I do sell our professional services. But the key, and I suppose my purpose for being so good at networking is to build relationships. And whilst it all may be about, new business, we do know that may not actually come for months, for years. And you have to keep nurturing those relationships. And so I chose this purpose early on in my sales career when selling the advertising at Rip It Up. And again, but by selling, but not blatantly selling. I've never been and never will be a sales cowboy, I suppose. And so, which is why I never worked at a commercial radio station or a TV network or the like. It just wasn't my style. I went for jobs there, and I think they probably realized, no, he's not going to be hardcore sales. He's going to be even though I probably would have been perfect because I would have been able to develop those relationships. But that's how I remind myself of my purpose of building relationships. And I suppose, and actually one of our biggest wins recently at the agency came about from a relationship that I had with a person in my previous role at the Australian Traffic Network, a job I went to after Rip It Up, 10 years ago. So I kept in touch with this person, and recently they reached out on LinkedIn and just said, would you be interested in going for this tender? And of course, it was all the preparation and everything that came before that. It wasn't just that they woke up one day and thought, I haven't spoken to that PK guy forever. It's because of the fact that I kept in touch, saw them at an event, sent them notes here and there.
That's really important. The words you just said there, kept in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and then obviously I then had to open the door and introduce them to where I work, but that's all I really do. I open the door and then smile and wave and walk away. But I'm happy, I've opened that door, and I suppose those people have come through that door because of the trust, I suppose, they have in me. And, we know how important trust is and how trust comes about from building that relationship and developing that trust.
And I think the thing that works with that as well is you've been at Fuller for 8 years now.
Just about,
and people know, when people get to know you, they would realise that he's not going to stay at a place that isn't a good place to be and doesn't deliver. Otherwise, it would damage your reputation.
Absolutely. We're all an extension of the brand, or wherever we are. We are an extension of that brand.
Well, that's a really interesting point, isn't
it? I mean, that's, to my way of thinking, that's the essence of branding, is understanding that you are part of the brand that you're representing. Yep. And everyone who is involved in that organization is a representation of that brand.
Yep. So your purpose in one sentence?
My purpose is to build relationships and continue to keep in touch with those people.
That's great. Cool. And then everything else flows from there. So look, your coffee with PK sessions, like we just mentioned that a while ago, it looks like it takes a bit of planning, right? How much planning and pre-planning work do you do for that show and for your other activities and initiatives? Also, I'm sure our listeners would love to know how you go about doing your planning, because that's a pretty important part of networking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, and it's interesting. And thank you for mentioning the coffee chats, because it's certainly something that just kind of happened out of the blue, because, as you pointed out, we're all just sitting around in our bedrooms, offices, whatever. And my job or my role in having to chat with people, I couldn't just do that. So it was actually my wife I have to thank. She said, why don't you just make yourself a coffee and then ring that person and have it on a speakerphone and chat with them. And it was around the time we were starting to do Zoom calls. And I thought, no, I'll take it one step further. People were starting to get used to doing Zoom or Google chat calls, etc. And so I literally put just a post on my social saying, tomorrow at 10:30, I'm going to be doing a Zoom call. And I just threw it out there. Let's call it Coffee with PK, because that's exactly what I was doing. And then it just blew up out of there. But it's interesting you ask about preparation, because back then there was crazy preparation that had to go on, because I did it every day, every working day. So
wow.
5 days a week at 10:30. So I just thought, like anything that becomes a success, I feel you have to put in the hard yards and you have to keep going. And I've spoken with a number of people who don't go on about big noting myself, but people have come back and said that they believe the reason that it's still going, 2.5 years, nearly 3 years later, is, I suppose, because of the consistency. In anything that we do, it's important to have that consistency. So yes, and they've pretty much been the saving grace for me, for my job and for my sanity. The fact that, I managed to create something, and branded it Fuller, where I work, and the fact that, it kept us relevant and on people's radar. It kept me in a job, and we're in the business of communication. And so I figured it's just an extension of that. So there was a lot of work, and there still is. I mean, these days I only do it once a week. No, sorry, never say only, never say just. I do it once a week.
That's good.
And that's fine. And I suppose it's become its own brand. It's got its own URL. And it has become an extension of who I am, of who Fuller are. And it's a way, I suppose, of keeping us on people's radar. And for me, it's a way of continuing to network with people. And I've created my own little content marketing around it as well, I suppose. For a while there, I was doing a weekly video recap, but that's back when I was doing it. So it went from being 5 days a week to when we moved back into the offices, I thought, well, I've got to actually do my job as well. So I dropped it back to 2 days a week online. And then one day I actually then started doing them, in real life, IRL, which people loved as well. And so what I'm trying to get at is that, it's like anything that we do, you've got to listen and to what you're doing and make sure it evolves so that it doesn't die, right? So you want to work the best way for you effectively as a person, but also for your brand and the company. So for me, and because it was essentially a networking event, I saw that I wanted to keep it going, but now it has dropped back to one day a week, and that's happening every Tuesday morning. And for some people, it's just a way of meeting others. For others, it's a way of practicing their elevator pitch, because I get people to start it. I know you've talked about the importance of elevator pitching, and that's exactly what I do. I get people we start by telling us who you are, what you do, and then I get everyone to share what they're grateful for. So gratitude brings everyone on the same level playing field. And that's why I could have a student, I could have a CEO, I could have the Australian of the Year, I could have anybody on that chat, and they all interconnect and relate and feel like they're just having a chat at a networking event.
That's fantastic. So, but with the planning, like you said, it was mad planning to begin with. Was that searching for people online on LinkedIn? Was that going through all your old lists and so forth? How did you do the planning then, and what does it look like now?
Sure. Great question. Yeah, it absolutely was. It was definitely going through my LinkedIn, making sure that I was being active on socials about it, but without selling it too blatantly. And it's never been a sales pitch, and certainly this isn't either, but it's certainly never been a sales pitch for where I work. It's certainly always, and that's, I suppose, what's made it attractive as well. And people come on the chat and start talking about what they do, and that's fine, but I won't. Sorry, I'm answering your question in a roundabout way, but it's certainly, it's so therefore the kind of people that I want on the chat, it doesn't really matter who you are and what you do, but I certainly want to make sure that they know that they can speak about what they do. And at the end of the day, we know the most effective way of networking is to not sell yourself. It's to talk about what you do and to find something interesting in someone else, and then hopefully they find something interesting in what you do. And then it becomes a sale without it actually effectively becoming a sale. So I definitely went through all of my database and reached out to them and just let them know, look, this is what it's about, kind of thing, and made them realize that it's not necessarily a selling pitch. It's just a networking
event. Great. Yeah. And so how does that planning, something like that, which you've created, differ for your planning from going to an event?
Good question. I suppose planning to an event. So you mean like what am I? How do I roll?
Well, do you get a list of the people that are attending and think, oh, I want to talk to that person, that person, that person, or do you just? Because I know we've had a chat before, and you said what I'll do in an event is I'll go up to the table before everyone gets there and look at the business cards.
You remember that one?
I remember everything we talk about.
Paul. Oh, mate, I love it. No, my tips for events are getting there early and thanking the organisers. Be the person that they want at every one of their events, right? Be that person that they want there without being annoying. I do scan the name tags, and so don't just look for yours. Like yesterday, I was at an event for UniSA, and I knew the girls there, and they came up and gave me my name tag, but I was still looking. I was looking around just to see who else was going to be in the room, and then I just dive in, and I think so that's definitely part of the preparation.
Do you know what I've done ever since we had that chat? I walk in and I take a photo of the name tag table and just walk away and go,
I've done that and I've been told off. But no, actually one event, I can't remember what it was, and they asked me to delete the photo. I'm like, but I'm at the event. But that's a really good tip, because not everyone's necessarily going to be there, or you can then send them a note later and saying, look, I know you were at the event, or maybe you had planned to be at the event, but we didn't get a chance to chat. And so that's another really cool way of being able to connect with them.
Yeah. What other methods and principles do you use when you're actually going to an event? How do you work the room? And
yeah, I dive in. I mean, I'm not shy, and I know not everyone finds it comfortable to be able to do it, but there will be some icebreakers that you can use to actually start that conversation. I would have a look at someone's name tag and comment on their company, or if they have a name that looks hard to pronounce, ask them how to pronounce their name. So people generally love talking about themselves. The trick is even better when there are no name tags and you ask someone their name. This happened the other night, and a girl said her name was Marie. Now, I didn't want to assume that was spelled Marie. So I said to her, is that Maree? She's like, no, it's IE. And then the other girl was Haley, and I said, is that with an IE or an EY? And so I met both these girls at an event, and I asked them that very question, and people love to hear their names spoken out loud, right, back to them. But it's also a clever way of remembering someone's name. So if you say it back to them and ask them to say your name back to you, then you'll hopefully remember it or somehow seep into your subconscious.
Because the worst thing in the world is when you meet someone and then 5 minutes later you can't remember their name. That other person comes into the group and says, hi, Brenton, how are you? And who's your friend? That's excellent, Paul.
I've got another top tip. Actually, I forgot. About names and people, because we do meet people or they may remember us, but we can't remember their name. And if I'm with someone as my plus one, a mate, whatever, if I don't introduce them by name, they know specifically, and I remind them this on the way in, that they need to ask that person their name, and then I listen. So that's another.
Oh, that's good. That's like a wingman situation.
So definitely have that wing person, because if they're your plus one, they're coming along to an event with you. They're getting into a cool event or something like that. And so get them to do a bit of the networking for you.
So how often do you, that's a really interesting point. How often do you tag team at an event with someone?
Oh, it depends. I mean, I will gladly go to an event by myself and just go and walk around and have some fun and chat with people. So it just depends on the event as well. But definitely that whole tag teaming, I think but again, you never want it to be obvious as well, and this is the whole key, I think, with networking. No one wants to be sold to. You just, as I said before, you just want to have that chat and find something where you hopefully can find a connection. And coming back to that the name thing, I think it's really good. And even if they've got a simple name, you just say it back to them, Dave, great to meet you. Yeah, my name's PK. That's the letter P, the letter K, or, my name's Brenton, Brenton, or whatever, you just say. And so hopefully, people love being remembered, right? And they want to remember that you've remembered them. And and then obviously, as we said, and you guys have always said, do your elevator pitch and make sure that you nail that, and it will often change, and make sure it leaves them wanting more. So, and if they have been listening, and show them that you have been listening by asking them a question as well about what they do. So, I think, and the final one that I would say is that when I meet someone, I like to say, what keeps you busy?
Ooh.
So what keeps you busy is a really good thing to say, rather than saying, where do you work? Because where do you work is
I hate that question.
Making a massive assumption, right?
Yeah.
So they may be a stay-at-home parent. They could be retired or a mature age student, who knows, or in between jobs. So but they are just as important as that person that's been at a company for, 25 years. So I never want people to feel uncomfortable. So I feel that it's very important, and that's a nice
What
icebreaker.
keeps you busy?
What keeps you busy?
Yep. That's great.
And people can have fun with that as well. Like, I've been on the beach all day, or, whatever. And you can have a bit of a laugh. And hopefully you want to make that, for someone that you've never met before, someone that, you want to make them feel as comfortable as possible straight away.
I also ask people, what's the most exciting thing you've been working on lately, or doing, or whatever else? I find that's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to talk for long either. Maybe suggest that you can connect on LinkedIn and et cetera, and the next day, and then chat further, kind of thing. We're all there to meet people and not talk to the same person for the whole event, or worse, the same person at every function. You don't want to do that. Or even worse, I highly recommend, if you go to an event with someone that you work with, do not talk to them at that event. You see them at work. Yeah. Don't waste your time. You will see them at work. You can chat to them there. You are there to network effectively, not to chat to your mate from work.
You just spoken about maybe connecting on LinkedIn and so on. Talk to us about follow-up. We've been pushing just how vital it is to get results. And I'd like to know if you have any stories that illustrate how crucial follow-up is.
Absolutely. I try to remember at the end of the day, my job is sales, but without actually selling, and that I am there to ultimately at some point convert networking into sales. But, how do we do that? And I also, as I said before, no one wants to be sold to at a function. So I've learned that it's all about relationship building, coming back to what I said, and people don't, realize that they are in fact being sold to. And yeah, I feel that's just the way I feel that, and I know I've been successful in that. So it's keeping in touch. It's finding something that connects you. And as you said, it's following up. So it's adding someone on LinkedIn the next day. And there's a really effective way of doing that, which I'll talk about a bit later in my tips. But and as I said before, it's remembering that you are an extension of the brand you work for, like I am with Fuller. And I've always had that attitude in every job that I've had. When I worked at Country Road, I wasn't just working for Country Road at the time, during the day. I was also at my break or when I was at home.
So you were wearing the chambray shirts when you were out, were you?
Correct. Wearing with a paisley tie and a long overcoat.
That's great.
I know you're a fan of the long overcoat, Ron. But absolutely. And then even when I was at Rip It Up, like going to concerts, going to gigs, etc., I'm an extension of that brand. So what I'm trying to say is that it's follow-up is crucial because it doesn't matter. Even though you might meet that person at a function or whatever, you're going to see them again, or you're hopefully going to chat with them again. So you're always going to be, I suppose, on brand. And follow-up is crucial because you've worked so hard on making that first impression and that you don't want to lose it. So look, and I know you've mentioned it before in previous episodes, and absolutely agree that you have to follow up inside a week or even days. I don't know. Do you guys say days or week? I can't remember.
Generally do it within 24 hours.
Right. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm
at very worst 3 days. Is where I would be going, oh man, I've not achieved what I need to if I'm longer than 3 days.
Absolutely. And stay on their radar. Look, I have had situations where I've called someone the next day and they've said, look, I'm glad you did, as I've been thinking about what you said and we do need to chat more about X, Y, Z. And so that's why I suppose the follow-up is crucial. And I have had other situations where I may not necessarily have followed up on someone and then I've seen them get in touch with our agency through someone else kind of thing. And I'm like,
so that's an interesting point, right? Because like a lot of people go into businesses like yours as a BD or whatever else, and there's a lot of pressure to sell. And I know from my past when it's like sell. If I do that, we're going to drive away the clients. We really need to work on relationships. So is it volume that gets you around that hurdle?
Yes, I would say. And also realizing that you're not going to win everything. You're not going to win every pitch that you put out there, every tender you go for. And I actually learned something. I don't know if you heard this one, but let's say you put out 10 proposals and you may win 3 of them or something like that, whatever percentage. It doesn't really matter what the percentage is. Those 7 jobs or proposals that you lost, you should, every time that person says no or rejects you, you should thank them because you're closer to that next, that next win. That's so right. It is about volume, absolutely, and being aware that not everybody's going to want to work with you or suit the way you work, and so just move on. The quicker you move on, the quicker you're going to get to. I know this is not about sales, but
it's all related.
Yeah, but the quicker you're going to, and that's why I'm a massive fan of Who Moved My Cheese, the book, the philosophy.
Ooh,
have you heard of it?
That, no.
Oh my gosh, fantastic! It's all about moving on from. It's about 2 months. It's a long philosophy, long story, but really cut short. It's 2 mice that every day they go towards the piece of cheese in the maze, and then one day the cheese is gone. And one mouse is lamenting the fact, who moved my cheese? I'm going to stay here until someone brings that cheese back. The other mouse takes off to look for more cheese. And the quicker the mouse, the quicker you go off to look for more cheese, the better. So it's all about moving on and accepting change. Yeah.
Now, listen, a quick one is you were mentioning earlier that when you go to an event, you shouldn't talk with your fellow workers and you go out and talk to new people. Now, that takes a lot of courage. And I know that sometimes the reason people don't do that is because they're really starting to come to grips with the fact that I've got to step out here on my own, because networking can be quite daunting, right? So my question is, and I know you're a master networker now and you have been for quite some time, but how have you improved? How have you reviewed and improved your performance? Because I'm imagining when you started at Country Road, you were being pretty green.
I was very.
So how did you go through that review and improve process and identify the things you needed to do? Because there'll be people who go to that networking event and stand in the corner talking to a staff member because they're paralyzed by inability to,
of course,
Yeah,
absolutely. Look, it's a really good question because I do try and test myself. I do try and push myself to go and meet someone that I may never have met before, or may see them walk in and think, oh, I wonder what that person does, and try and talk to them and realize that it doesn't matter what they do or who they are or where they are, or even if, for example, they maybe work for a company that already has someone else looking after their marketing or their sales, whatever, but that person may move on to another job, or they probably will at some point. So you want to continue to build that relationship. So I continually push myself. I push myself to go to events that I may not have wanted to, realizing that it may be of an ultimate benefit to me. I do say yes to a lot of things. I don't say yes to everything, but at an event, I will use my notes function on my phone to note down whomever I've spoken to, even if I've already connected with them. So I spend a bit of time the next day. I'm going through that, and I'll either send them a note on LinkedIn saying, great to see you last night. It was really good to chat about whatever. Or I will make sure that I followed up with new people, send them a note and try and, you never know that, if that will trigger them to come back with a request for work or anything, just staying on their radar, keeping in touch, as I said. And I realized that no matter how good we are, we can always learn, no matter how good we are at everything. And if you're certainly not ultimate what you do if you think that, you never need to learn. And I've got to say, and no, you did not ask me to say this, I have been enjoying your podcast and the series about networking and also the BD series. And there's so many great tips and reminders. And that's just it. I think we have to refresh our learnings. So it's doing things like listening to podcasts like this one, going to events where people talk about networking or relationship building, learn all you can, perhaps be a mentor, If you can find a mentor, that's fantastic. But I think it's great, either side of that.
You know what's really interesting in what you've just said there? You said perhaps be a mentor. I've found that even for this podcast, when we have to put topics on the table that we have to discuss, I learn from it because I have to actually go and study to actually put things in order. We went and saw Jordan Peterson the other night.
Fantastic.
Mr. Famous psychologist. And one of the things he was talking about was the fact that if we write things down or we study something, it orders our thoughts. So when you have to mentor somebody, you really have to think things through to order your thoughts, and it helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a mentor with UniSA now for 11 years, part of their business school, and I absolutely love it. And I've found that it's relearning everything that you've learned over the years kind of thing, and then sharing your knowledge. I think it's really important to do that. So therefore, to learn more about what your mentees are doing. And that's what I found with the young students at UniSA. I'm learning more from them as much as they're learning from me. And that's the beauty of mentoring.
Excellent. Cool.
Yeah, and I have to say, to reinforce that point, I've learned more about business by being a business mentor than I ever did when I was actually in business.
It's your professional job. You must be learning all the time.
Well, I am. And I learn from helping other people. And, it's the same as Paul was saying. If you really want to understand networking, help out someone else with their networking.
Yeah, great.
It will refresh and reaffirm what you do.
Okay, Paul, the Business Builders podcast is all about giving practical advice to business professionals and young guns. So it would be great to wrap up our discussion today with what you recommend as the top 3 things you can do right now to improve your networking results. Most dramatic.
Excellent. Great question. And here's something I prepared earlier. So I do have 3 really good tips. My first one is when you get to an event and you get the name tag given to you, put it on the right side of your body. Put it on the right side. I know it's not natural for guys as we have a pocket or a jacket, with on the left. But of course, if we're wearing a jacket like all stylish men that we're wearing a pocket square there right in there, and we don't want to cover that pocket square, right? Anyway,
absolutely.
No, the reason I say this is that when you shake someone's hand, the natural thing is to approach with your right hand, right? So the natural gaze will be all along that arm, all the way up to your pec. And so therefore they will see your name tag straight away, right? So I always have it on the right. When I shake someone's hand, the natural gaze will be to the right. If it's on the left, you'll find that, when you go to shake their hand, or you're shaking there and they've got their name tag on the left, you're trying to look at it and see what it is.
And your other shoulder goes away from you.
Yeah, exactly. So it also means for ladies that, people are not looking all over your upper region, which may appear a tad awkward. So if the name tag is right there for that person to see it, then it's, you can see it straight away and you can take a quick glance at it without, having to look around for it and make it look awkward. So I suppose it's a way of seeing someone's name, and it's also gold when you have the name tag on the right and it's in the line of sight. And if that other person forgets your name, you are doing them a favor as they can quickly glance at it and be reminded of it. Or if it works in reverse as well, as long as the person also has their name tag on the right, because, you might forget their name and kind of think it's like, oh, that's right, that is John, far out. So have it on the right. I want more people, as many people as possible to do that, and then it's going to help both of us.
Okay. Tip number 1.
Next time I go to an event, we'll know how many people listen to this podcast
there you go.
by the number who start putting their name tag on the right.
Put it on the right.
Okay, number 2.
Don't waste time at a networking event. Time is precious. We all just want to meet someone and move on. And I know I keep saying that I don't want to be sold to, so just chat with them. And I think the key is to be totally honest about your situation. You can say, look, I've only got half an hour. I've only got an hour because I need to take, my kid to sport, or I need to, go to the shops on the way home. Otherwise the family won't eat tonight. So you can have a bit of a fun and a bit of a laugh about it. But you are there for a good quality time, not a long time. And the other thing is to move around and meet as many people as possible, and you can mention your time limit. You say, look, I've got to go to another function, which is more than fine. And then you can just say to them, look, do you have a card, or do you mind if I jot down your name and we connect on LinkedIn tomorrow? I'd love to continue this conversation when we both have more time. So yeah, be really effective with your time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that kind of rolls into your purpose a bit that you talked about earlier. Your whole purpose is to build relationships at volume, I'm imagining.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if you're going to make most use of a network, you want to, because that's only the start of the relationship.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 3?
Well, it does roll into number 3. So after you meet someone, I know we've talked about this, but add them into your LinkedIn network the next day or soon after. But with 2 key additions, I only ever do it on the desktop. So only ever connect with people via desktop. It's easy to do it on your phone, but the problem when you do it on your phone is you press connect and it just sends them the connection. I always recommend people adding a note. Yeah. So if you do it and also that's the whole thing. Like if you see on LinkedIn, often they'll come up with recommended people you should meet in your network kind of thing.
Yes.
If you just press their name or connect, it will just go straight to them. If you click on their profile and then where it says connect, it will then say, would you like to add a note? And always add a note. Because you can never assume that someone will know who you are or remember that chat you had the night before. So leave a note saying, hey, John, it was really good. I really enjoyed our quick chat about blah, blah, blah. Mention something you talked about. And that is going to start the relationship right there and then. And it may be the reason that who knows, they could be the most popular person in the room. They may get 20 requests, but the person that actually added the note is the one that they're going to remember.
The one that listened to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In fact, just as a rule of thumb, I never connect with anyone, as in accept anyone, unless they've written me a note.
That is music to my ears.
That's great.
So, and I have to say, just recently, you did exactly that.
There you go.
And so we're connected now.
I love it.
Excellent. So that was your tips. Look, that was really great, Paul. And I'm sure people would have picked up 2 or 3 or 4 things from what we were discussing today. So thank you so much.
Look, thank you so much for the opportunity. I absolutely love networking. I love the opportunity to talk about it. I feel comfortable doing it. And it's second nature for me these days, but it's something that I continue to work on. And platforms like this awesome podcast is just another way of, as I said before, refreshing your learnings and continuing to come back and listen to them so that you always want to be better yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'd just like to say on behalf of Brenton and I, thank you for coming on board today, PK, and have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, and to all of you who are listening, we just want to say thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for your feedback. It's been fantastic, and we hope you have a safe and happy festive season, everybody.
Bye. See you later.